Hello, my name is Omed, and the meaning of Omed, it means hope. Uh, Omed is an Afghani name, and Pashto, it's Omeid. In Farsi, it's Umeed. In Urdu, it's Omeid. So uh, my name comes from several languages, and again, the meaning is hope. So the reason why I mention this is because I'm writing an autobiography about my life, and the book is going to be called OmedHope, and I'm almost done with it. But what I want to do here today, and the reason for this video, is to get feedback and criticism, whether it's good or bad, from the viewers, such as yourself out there. I've been told before that my story is so compelling and enticing that it needs to be a book, and I've been told that it's so enticing and interesting that most likely it would be converted into a movie, sort of like the story of Malcolm X, and how Spike Lee, he converted the book that Alex Haley wrote, Malcolm X, and he made it a movie. Now, subhanallah, the story starts with, of course, I was born in Arlington, Virginia in 1982, and Arlington, Virginia is the home of the United States Pentagon, and the storyline will start with a memory that I had from the age of 3. I can't remember when I was 2 or 1 years old, but I remember when I was 3 because there was a sad and traumatizing moment, in a situation that happened that my sister Star and I had witnessed. My father used to indulge in watching football and getting drunk and intoxicated, and according to my mother, he would get involved into narcotics such as cocaine and I'm pretty sure other narcotics. One night, my father was so drunk and possibly high on drugs that he wasn't home, and my mom went searching for him, and she took my sister and I along with her because there wasn't a babysitter to watch us, and it was late at night. So we ended up in this neighborhood called Washington Lee Apartments in Arlington, Virginia, which is literally about 1 or 2 minutes away from the Pentagon that I mentioned earlier. And when she found him there, she was begging him to come home, and he refused, and they started to argue outside of the apartment building, and my father pulled out a gun on her, and as soon as my mother noticed the gun, she started to run, and while she was running, my father pulled the trigger 3 times. He shot 3 times, and then my mother fell into the bushes, and my father thought that he had killed my mother, and then he turned a gun on himself and he shot himself. MashaAllah, my mother survived because none of the bullets hit her except for one. It grazed her leg, MashaAllah. And my father, MashaAllah, shot himself in the head. And normally when people shoot themselves in the head, they die. But my father was in a coma, he didn't die. MashaAllah. And may Allah forgive my father for that night. Ameen. Now, a year later, my mother had to put my sister and I into a daycare center and like Sunday school because she was working at McDonald's and she had another job because she had to pay bills and raise 2 children. And she enrolled us into a Columbia Baptist church, which was located in Falls Church, Virginia. Now, this church had some famous people coming there, such as Washington Redskins head coach Joe Gibbs, and also a lady by the name of Bridget Nielsen. And Bridget Nielsen was the fiance of Sylvester Stallone at the time. MashaAllah. So Bridget Nielsen was actually my Sunday school teacher, and she used to take care of me, and I was her favorite student. she loved me so much that she used to just give me all the attention and basically ignore all the other kids. But we had other teachers that were taking care of the other kids because Bridget Nielsen was just a volunteer there, and she did this out of the kindness of her heart. And I recall her. I remember her showing me pictures of Sylvester Stallone, and at the time I used to watch these movies, Rocky and Rambo, and as soon as she would show me the pictures, I would be like, wow, that's Rocky. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's Rambo. And as a child, I thought they were two different people, and I always thought, and I'm pretty sure most children and kids think this way, that movies are real, So I didn't know if that was Rocky or Rambo, but she said, I promise you one thing. And she said, I promise that you will meet him one day. Do you want to meet him? I said, yes, I want to meet him. I was so excited. But I still didn't know which one he was, Rocky or Rambo. MashaAllah, I was a gullible kid. And I guess that's why she loved me, because I was shy and I was a very cute kid, MashaAllah. So one day Bridget Nielsen and I were outside in the playground, and she used to always hold me and put my head on her chest and just rock me back and forth. And there was a bee that came close to us, and she started panicking. And I guess she hit the bee, and the bee started chasing her. She was running, and then the bee turned around and started coming after me. And then I start running. And then next thing you know, I stand still because Bridget Nielsen yells at me. She's like, stop! She's like, Omed, stand still, don't move. So I put my hands up, I didn't move. And the bee got close to me and closer to me, and it landed on my chest, and then it stung me. And I screamed so loud. That was the first time I ever got stung by a bee. And Bridget Nielsen ran over there to me. She picked me up while I was crying, and she hugged me and she squeezed me. She said, I'm so sorry. And she started crying because I was crying. Bridget Nielsen, she loved me so much, and I loved her. She was like my second mother at the time. And mashallah, she came through with her promise. Later on, I eventually, I was growing up, and I got into an elementary school called Grand Road Elementary School in Falls Church, Virginia. And I was in first grade, and I happened to be, walking down the hallways when school was dismissed, and my mother enrolled my sister Star and I into a after school program, which is like a babysitting or program called SAC, which a lot of elementary schools in Northern Virginia have, especially for working parents. They couldn't afford a babysitter. So as I'm walking down, getting ready to go to my after school program, I noticed that there were so many people, in the hallways, like excited and yelling, and they're like starstruck. And even I see the principal and the vice principal and a lot of teachers and a lot of kids. It's like packed in the hallway near the office area. And they were starstruck for real because Sylvester Stallone and Bridget Nielsen, walked in the doors, and there's a limousine parked out front. And so as I was walking, closer to the crowd, Bridget Nielsen, she points at me and she was excited, and everybody turns and they look at me. And I was so shy, and I wasn't used to all this attention. And it got worse for my shyness, I guess, for lack of a better term, when Sylvester Stallone said my name. He said, Omed. That deep voice that he has in the movie. He was like, Adrian. He said, Omed. And as soon as he said my name, like, everybody was just quiet. Like, wow, he knows that kid. Like, who is that kid? And the popular kids and all the teachers and the principal was so happy. Like, Sylvester Stallone just said my name, a first grader's name, as if, he knows them and they're buddies. I wasn't used to all this attention. And I did something crazy. I don't know if it was crazy or not. I was just so shy and embarrassed. I ran away. And then I started running up these steps, and I ran to this counselor's office, and I went to her stuffed animals. She used to have these stuffed animals, like a McGruff, the crime-fighting dog, and a dolphin. and a baby beluga that swims in the deep blue sea. And I took the stuffed animals and I went hiding underneath her desk. And she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Rocky's here, Rambo." I said, "Well, he said my name." And she thinks I'm crazy at this time. You're like, "Rocky Rambo," and he said your name? I said, "Yes." And everybody was looking at me, and she said, "Wait right here." And she went, downstairs, and I thought that she would come back right away, but I guess she became starstruck too, and she was gone for about 20 minutes. And then she came back to me, and I'm still underneath the desk, hiding. And she came back to me, and she was like, "That's Sylvester Stallone. He's an actor, he's a celebrity from Hollywood. He wants to meet you, he wants to talk to you. Come downstairs." I said, "No, no, 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 no." And, like, I thought that my life had just turned into a movie, and I thought that there was hidden cameras somewhere, and bad guys would start jumping out, and there would be a shootout, because that's all you see in movies, things exploding, and police chases and stuff. And I wasn't prepared for that. As a kid, I didn't know what was gonna happen, so I felt more comfortable hiding underneath the desk. And I guess that's why Bridget Nielsen and most adults loved me, because I was a unique kid. I had an interesting personality, and so I refused to go and speak to Sylvester Stallone and Bridget Nielsen, and I walked to my after school program, and I didn't tell my sister about it. I didn't tell nobody about it afterwards. Didn't tell my family. Of course, the whole school knew, but I kept it quiet. And from that then on, I thought that there was always cameras on me, and I thought that my life was a movie. So, my future started to get, pretty interesting. Later on, I heard that, Bridget Nielsen and Sylvester Stallone got a divorce. And if they're watching this, Mr. Stallone, Miss Nielsen, if it was my fault that y'all got a divorce, I'm so sorry. And if, y'all read my book, or, if my story's converted into a movie, I will apologize to y'all in person, because I was so shy that day. I didn't know what to do. I wasn't used to that fame and attention. And so I hope it wasn't because of me. But it's possible that it was me, because maybe Sylvester Stallone and Bridget Nielsen left, and Sylvester Stallone said, "You embarrassed me. I met the kid and he ran away. I said his name and he ran away." And she was probably crying because she was missensitive, and they probably got a divorce because of that. Well, God forbid. That's just an assumption right there. I really don't know why they got a divorce. But anyways, to continue with the story, I grew up in this ghetto neighborhood called KC, Kingsley Commons. And we had so many gangs, the Bloods and Crips and 187 and, Marali, 7LC, TRG, all these different gangs, like Asian gangs, black gangs, Hispanic gangs, and the Hispanic gangs were the majority, and the black gangs were the most dangerous. Asian gangs were dangerous too. I mean, they're all dangerous. And this neighborhood was so ghetto, so crazy, that they had to put a police station inside the neighborhood. And it was all townhomes. And they had a police station, inside one of the townhomes. There was 2 police officers, Fairfax County police officers, which were like the highest paid police in the nation, or the second highest paid police in the nation, in America. And there are 2 police officers at all times inside that townhouse, but it was so ghetto that they couldn't maintain, peace and, tranquility in the neighborhood. And I remember that there was a bank not too far from our neighborhood, and the bank used to get robbed all the time. And advice to bank owners, like, never put a bank next to a ghetto, because you will get robbed. So there was like drive-by shootings and stabbings and gang violence and burglaries and robberies and all the stuff that would happen. And as a child, it would affect me too, because my family would get me bikes, and every year I would get a new bike. I went through like 7 or 8 bikes and scooters, and people would just steal them from me. If I would put them in my backyard just for a minute, just to go inside and get a drink, I would come back outside, the bike is gone. There was times where I'd be riding the bike, next I get hit and fall off the bike, and the gangs would just take my bike and ride off. And I'm crying watching them ride away with my bike, and they're like, "Shut up, fool!" And like, it was that bad. One year, my uncle Atik, It was my Uncle Sharif who used to give me the bikes, I love him for that. It was my Uncle Teek who bought me a football for my birthday. It was a University of Maryland football. It was white and red, and I was tossing it around after school with my friend Mustafa Wafa, who's now currently the owner of Dunya Clothing, and he's a part owner of Target Squad. He knows Project Pack, 3-6 Mafia, and Snoop Dogg wears his clothing line, Dunya, and that's a different story. But at the time, he was my best friend, and we used to throw the football around, and next thing you know, the gangs were they came in and they jumped me and him just to take my football. So my mom realized this neighborhood is so ghetto. She was looking for ways for us to move out. Later on, my father, he came back into our lives, and my mother, she had mercy on him, and she realized that, we needed a father figure in our life, because especially in that ghetto neighborhood, it was unsafe, and and my mom was afraid that I would get into gangs, and my sister Star would get into gangs, which we actually did. Got jumped into gangs, but she was afraid that we would take that ghetto path, and people were getting killed, and doing drugs and doing bad stuff, so she didn't want us, or go to jail, juvenile detention center, or prison and stuff. She didn't want us to fall a victim to any of that, so she thought that my father would help. When my father came back, all he would do, as far as I remember, is watch football. He was a Washington Redskins football fan, and he used to constantly drink beer and smoke cigarettes all the time, and he was so abusive towards my mother, and I guess my mother was verbally abusive towards him, and then he was physically abusive towards her, and it was just, they were not a good mix, and it was scary for my sister and Star and I to witness this. And there was a time where my sister, Star, and my mother, and my aunt, they all went out to a wedding, and at this time I had a new baby sister, Diva, and she was just an infant at the time, and my father took her and I with him to his friend's house because he didn't want to leave us home alone, or he wasn't supposed to. And he got so drunk, and we're driving on the highway 495, and my father almost crashed like so many times. And if it wasn't for me grabbing the steering wheel and putting us back on the road, we would be dead. And I was more worried about my baby sister because she was an infant. I knew if we got into an accident that she would die because she was a baby, and I loved my baby sister so much. And I thought that if we would crash it, maybe my father and I would survive. My father was being a big, strong man, and me with reflexes, at least I'm not a baby, but every time I would grab the steering wheel, he would hit me and abuse me. Don't touch it no more, I know what I'm doing. I said, Dad, you're about to cry. He said, don't touch him. So I'm quiet, and I'm panicking, and I was afraid to even cry because I was afraid that he would beat me up for being a wimp. And then again, he almost crashed, and I grabbed the steering wheel, and I saved our lives. And my father later on realized that, I did save our lives. But he was so drunk, and when we got back to the neighborhood, he got into a fight with the gang 187. And my mom was scared later on when she found out about that. He got into a physical fight with them. Like, he was crazy. He started saying, I'm Alexander the Great, and he ripped his shirt, and I was looking out the window. He's fighting all these gang members. He's lucky he didn't get shot right there. Even the gangsters would start running away from him, like, man, you crazy, dog. And yeah, that's my father. One day my father packed his stuff, and he kissed my sister Star and I goodbye, and he said he was never coming back, and he left the country for good.